Gonzaga week is here. Casey Matthews and myself are joined by Theo Lawson from spokesmanreview.com. We're going to get his insight on the Jays versus the Zags. Also, is it technically the Ryan Nembhard Bowl? We'll discuss all that more. It's the Roll Jays podcast.
Heads up, it's the Roll Jays podcast, the voice of the Creighton basketball fan. With your hosts, Jimmie Allen and Casey Matthews. Join the crew and meet CU players, coaches, and a whole lot more. Now, the Roll Jays podcast. Here's Jimmie Allen.
Welcome to the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pepper Jack's Grill and Pyramid Contractors. Jimmie Allen, Casey Matthews, now joined by Theo Lawson of the spokesmanreview.com. Theo, thanks for being here, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
We're
Theo,
obviously
I like to,
oh, good, Case.
Sorry, no. I like to jump right in. Can you just tell us in just a couple, like, what makes Gonzaga so good and why are they rated so low?
Yeah, I mean, they've always been kind of like an analytic starling. I mean, if you look at KenPom, they're number 8. KenPom, I mean, even last year when they got, a pretty low seed in the tournament relative to their standards, they were still a top 7, 8 team on KenPom. But I think just the fact that they've had a few down years by their standards where they haven't quite, been that Sweet 16, Elite 8 contender every year, and obviously losing – point guard that you guys know well, and then 2 other starting guards from last year's team, and 4 total starters from last year. I think people kind of needed to see it with Gonzaga before they put him back into that top 15, top 10 picture. But one way to get there is by beating a SEC team at home like they did last night.
Well, I want to talk about the Ryan Nembhard era, but maybe even before that. Obviously, you guys are a few years removed from the Drew Timme era where you guys had Justin Strawweather and Anton Watson, obviously, and you guys go on that run to the Final Four. Does it feel like that was the golden years of Gonzaga basketball up until this point? And how does this team match up against what Mark Few and those guys have been able to do 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think if you wanted to point to kind of the golden era, I mean, you'd either have to go to the 2016-17 team that made the championship game against North Carolina, or the 21 team that obviously went undefeated until that Baylor loss in the title game.
Yeah.
I think maybe people assume that they can't get back there, and that's why maybe some people are lower on Gonzaga now. But I think within the program here, they still believe they're doing everything that they've done in the past, and they have good rosters. They've actually had a great 2 months recruiting. They picked up 4 big commitments last month. So I think there's a sense that maybe Mark Few's kind of at the tail end of his career, and they're not quite in that Final Four picture every year now, that maybe they've dropped off. But I guess they kind of need to prove it that they haven't dropped off. But I still believe that they're kind of within that top 20 every year, and still kind of a team that you have to look at in March, and capable of springing upsets, and almost upset top seeded Houston last year in the round of 32. So. They just kind of keep producing these great big men and bringing in great transfers like Ryan Nembhard and kind of some of the players they have this year. So I don't think they've gone anywhere. They just kind of need to make another one of those deep runs to maybe prove that they're still within that top 8, 10 schools in the sport.
Yeah, you made some interesting points there, and I kind of want to compare the programs with you, because when you look back at Gonzaga basketball, a lot of the younger fans won't remember the Dan Munson era, and then 1999, Mark Few comes in and really just continues what Coach Munson had really had rolling. When you compare that to Creighton, another mid-major program at the time in the Valley, with Dana Altman, gets this program rolling. Mac comes in and takes it to a new level with a little help from his son. As they entered into the Big East, and then even after Doug, obviously, goes on, Max just continued to build this program to what it is now, to where if we're not a preseason top 25 team, it's interesting, right? It's almost frustrating for our fans. Can you talk about now, because what you just said was interesting to me, was that like we need to make another deep run. People think that Mark Few is towards the end of his career, which, I mean, realistically probably is. Same with Mac. Mac's already come out and said it. So how much of that has to do with NIL in this era, and how much of it has to do with just like a natural progression of like the expectations are just so high that anything that's not a top 15 seed is considered a slight.
I think right now it's more the progression, and they have gotten to that. Once they got to that national title game in 2017, it was like the next thing that we haven't done is win the national title. So whenever they don't do that, it's relatively considered a disappointing year. But I just always go back to, like you said, the late 90s and early mid 90s when they weren't on the map nationally, and if you would have said in 1995 that a Sweet 16 year was a down year for Gonzaga, people would have been laughing. So I think you always have to remember where you came from, and there's 350 schools in the country that would love to be in a Sweet 16 every year, and they did it for 9 straight years before last year. So I think perspective is an important thing, and they've never really had a bad season under Mark Few. I mean, they've made the tournament every year, and with NIL and with especially revenue sharing, I think the expectations will be higher because they're joining a Pac-12 conference where every other school in the conference has football, and so every other school has to kind of split their revenue share with football. And Gonzaga has the luxury of being a basketball only school, and so they're thought to have a big advantage there with their revenue sharing, and maybe they can pay players a little bit more than San Diego State or Boise State or Washington State. So we'll kind of see how that trend goes in the next 5 to 10 years once they get into that conference. But it's just like any team that has success. I think the fans start to want more success, and I think you have to take a step back sometimes and realize where Gonzaga came from. They weren't Duke, they weren't North Carolina or Kansas. They were a small mid-major school in a corner of the country that people didn't really know about until Mark Few got there. And Dan Munson, of course, and then Mark Few obviously sustained it.
Well, I want to talk about that blue blood mentality, because Mark Few seems to want to schedule the best of the best when it comes to non-con. You talked about it, you guys just took on Oklahoma. You played Kentucky 2 years ago. You opened up the season with Baylor last year. How much of an excitement does it come with the program knowing that Gonzaga can draw the ire to not only play these teams, but get them to come to Spokane as well? What does that do for the fan base?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting because once you get to January, you're really kind of relying on maybe 2 to 3 games in the West Coast Conference to boost your resume, because you play St. Mary's twice, and those are kind of always the 2 games guaranteed that they're going to be a top 25 quad 1 opponent every year. But Gonzaga really has to kind of do their work in the non-conference because of the WCC, and we'll see if that changes in the Pac-12. But Mark Hughes had no trouble scheduling 7 to 8. At least power conference opponents every year, and getting teams to come to Spokane. Although I made the joke last night that after the Oklahoma game, teams might not come to Spokane Arena anymore. They blew out Kentucky by 16 points. They just steamrolled Baylor there last year in the season opener, I think by 38 points. And then, I think they were up by as many as 24 last night against Oklahoma. So, we'll see what happens Tuesday. I think Creighton's going to be a much better opponent, but it's a testament to what they've done that people are willing to come up and make the trip, as long as Gonzaga makes a return trip back. And they have the 6-year series with Kentucky. They're going on year 4 that this year, playing in Nashville, and then they're obviously in the Players Era tournament for probably the next 2 or 3 years at least. And so they really have to schedule these games to kind of boost their resume and kind of get to that that top 3-4 seed line by March.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit, you said played Oklahoma, obviously we can see the stats, and I know a couple of the guys on your team. Obviously there's some new faces. What do you think so far? I mean, you had expectations during the summer. I'm sure you heard Coach Few talking about certain guys. Where is this team at compared to like where you thought they'd be? Are they ahead of schedule? They maybe behind we thought they'd be? Like, can you dive into that for us?
I think probably a little bit ahead of schedule. I mean, I think when you looked at this team in the summer, once Graham Mike and Braden Huff both announced that they're coming back, you kind of knew everything that they did would go through those guys, especially offensively. What you didn't really know is defensively what this team would look like coming off last year. I mean, it was one of the worst defensive teams Mark Few had, and they were still top 40, I think top 50 defensively in the country, which is not too shabby, but relative to where they've been, and not obviously to be a Final Four team, you kind of need to have a top 10 offense, top 10 defense, generally speaking. And so they really took a step back last year, and 2 straight games in conference play, they gave up 200 combined points, gave up 103 to Santa Clara in the kennel last year. And so I think last year just left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and they really kind of restocked their their wing spot, their guard spot to get longer and more active on the perimeter. So I think I'm not too surprised with what Graham Ike and Huff have done through the first 2 games, but just seeing the defense play the way it has, and just also rebounding. I think with kind of adding the length and athleticism on the perimeter, they've gotten a lot better at rebounding and don't have to just rely on those 2 bigs to get every rebound. So you saw that last night, and just kind of overwhelmed a pretty athletic Oklahoma team on the glass and defensively.
You mentioned it, obviously, Creighton and Gonzaga almost on this parallel path. Both teams get to the dance last year, get past their first opponent, but don't get past the first weekend because they both run into a 1 seed. But you do return a guy in Graham Ike. How special is he, and how high is his ceiling this year?
Yeah, he's one of the more productive big men in the country, and just kind of one of those guys that probably feels like he has to stay in college for 4 to 5 years because he doesn't have what the NBA scouts would consider as an NBA skill set. He's kind of shown the ability to step out and hit the occasional 3, but he's not shooting at a high volume. He's not your classic rim protector like Kalkbrenner was last year at Creighton, but he does what he does really well. He's a load in there. He's strong. I think he's a better rebounder than people probably give him credit for. And he's just really excelled in the system since he got here from Wyoming, and especially now pairing with Huff. I mean, they hadn't played those 2 together until the conference title game last year against St. Mary's. They hadn't beat St. Mary's at all last year, and then they kind of switched things up in the conference championship game, and then those 2 together, obviously beat St. Mary's, killed Georgia in the first round of the tournament, and then almost beat Houston. And those 2 actually played really well against Houston's front court. So since they kind of started together, they've been a really good tandem, and we're starting to kind of see more of that the first couple of games of this year. But Ike is really productive, just has the highest motor, and really kind of gets up for these big games against the big opponents.
Yeah, you guys are so deep, and I think that's something that as a Creighton guy we're saying as well. We have multiple guys at different positions that we feel like can argue that they should play, and some of them should start. And I think the same can be said in a lot of stuff for a couple of positions for Gonzaga. When I look at your team, I look just at last night, Jalen Worley coming off the bench, Tyson Grant-Foster coming off the bench. Those are 2 guys that, not just at Gonzaga, but most leagues and most teams in the league are going to start. It's such a luxury to be able to bring those guys. Side note, we actually recruited Jalen Worley, and we're really close to getting him until he went to Florida State. So it's not only Nembhard, but it's Worley I'm bitter on. But can you talk about your backcourt a little bit? And I mean, it seems like all the pub right now is going to Ike, which he deserves. But your backcourt's pretty darn good too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's replacing 3 veteran guards and Nembhard and Knowlton Hickman and Caleb Bell isn't an easy thing to do, but they've gotten better defensively for sure. And the point guard is still kind of I wouldn't say a question mark, but they replaced Ryan Nembhard, the nation's leading assist getter, with Braden Smith, who had to sit out last year, redshirted after transferring from Colgate. They also bring in Mario Saint-Superi from Spain. I'd say there's really kind of a battle there right now between those 2. I mean, Smith has started the last 2 games, but I think Saint-Superi has actually got more minutes in both games. He played a lot more last night against Oklahoma, just bigger guard. Has played at Spain's top level there in the ACB, and played on the team for Eurobasket this summer. Was on the floor against Giannis in Greece and playing key minutes for Spain in that Eurobasket tournament. So he's really experienced. And then really I think the wing position is where they've just gotten so much better. Bringing in Jalen Worley, who also had to sit out last year after transferring from Virginia, where they didn't actually play a game, but was at Virginia for a few weeks at least before Tony Bennett retired. And then Grant Foster is kind of the one that's gotten a lot of publicity the last few weeks. Wasn't eligible to play 2 weeks ago, and I was sitting in a Spokane courtroom 2 weeks ago, waiting for a judge to tell us that he could play or couldn't play. And that one decision, I mean, just made such a big difference for this team's ceiling. I mean, he's such an X factor because of not only the creation that he can do offensively, but just defensively. He's long, blocked a couple shots. I think didn't get credit for one of his blocks last night, but had a few blocks and had a few alley-oops, put back dunk. So he's just really electric on both ends, and I think just kind of raises the ceiling. And then like you mentioned, I mean, having a guy like Worley off the bench is such a luxury, and what he can do defensively, rebounding wise, just another long guy that you can throw out there on the perimeter that this team just didn't have last year.
His length.
You mentioned a minute ago, and obviously a lot of people around here are excited about Tuesday, but we're also really excited about the trip over Thanksgiving week to Las Vegas, and Gonzaga is going to participate in the Players Era Festival. How has that event kind of changed the way Mark Few and that staff kind of view the regular season schedule? You talked about adding Power Four and notable teams to the schedule. Does that help their cause and maybe make scheduling making a little bit easier for them?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure it's going to change their approach too much to non-conference scheduling. I think as long as Mark Few's there, I think they're always going to just schedule aggressively, and anyone who wants to play Gonzaga, I think they're willing to put those teams on the schedule. So they've played in a number of these tournaments throughout the years. I mean, not the Players Era per se, but every year or two there've been Maui or the Bahamas, or they
Right.
they've played in the Phil Knight tournament twice in Portland. So they're always going to kind of be in one of these stacked Thanksgiving tournaments. I'm sure it'll be the Players Era festival as long as they're dishing out $1 million to teams to come.
Right.
I'm not sure Gonzaga is going to pass that up as long as it's there, but we'll see how sustainable that tournament is over the next 5-10 years. But yeah.
You asked us if we were making the trip to Spokane. Are you making the trip over Thanksgiving week to Vegas?
Oh yeah, I traveled every game, so I'll be there.
Okay.
I think I'm flying in Sunday or Monday, and then hopefully they don't play the Thursday Thanksgiving game because I've got to get back home to California for Thanksgiving with my family. But we'll see if they play that Thursday game. But I'll be there.
Casey and I were reviewing the schedule on Saturday night. We're like, oh wow, we don't have a Christmas or a Thanksgiving game yet this year.
Yeah,
that would be really nice. It'd be a nice change of pace.
Yeah, I think it'll kind of be like watching the tournament in November, the NCAA tournament. Just going to all the games. So pretty excited for that.
So you're in California and you get up to every game, huh?
No, sorry. I live here in Spokane, but my parents are in the Bay Area. So, planning to make a quick stop up there for Thanksgiving and then get back to Spokane.
Okay. It's like, man, you're a real absolute road warrior. Yeah. Okay. I do want to dive in a little bit more to Tuesday, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on our team. And, where do you see advantages? Where do you see disadvantages for Gonzaga? And where would you expect Coach Few to try to attack and outperform Creighton?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't watched a ton of Creighton. I woke up and I was already writing my rewind from yesterday's game before I got on with you guys. So I'll do a lot of my Creighton stuff later today and tomorrow. So maybe this is where you guys can tell me a little bit more about Creighton. But I did have a chance to watch part of the South Dakota game last week, and or I guess earlier this week. And thankfully I have Peacock and was able to get on the stick and watch the game. Good broadcast. I always love listening to John Fanta on the broadcast. So. The one takeaway I had is, I think Owen Freeman's going to be a load for Gonzaga. They haven't played an elite big man in their first two games like that. And I think when he entered the portal, I think Gonzaga was one of the schools that contacted him. I'm not sure how much contact there was.
Sure.
That was obviously before EK and Huff both announced that they were coming back to school. But I think at that point, you're not really sure if Huff's going to go into the portal. EK had the chance to potentially go pro. So I think Freeman's the type of big man that Gonzaga likes to have on their team. So I think he's going to be an interesting matchup. And Huff and EK last year had issues with foul trouble. I mean, there was one game against Santa Clara where they both had I think 3 fouls in the first half, and they basically were kind of taken out of the rotation the remainder of the game. So I think the biggest key for Gonzaga is going to be to keep those two on the court, and maybe hope Freeman's the one getting into foul trouble, not Huff and EK. But I kind of just noticed the athleticism gap between Gonzaga and Creighton might be substantial. I felt like South Dakota was kind of getting to a lot of their spots and kind of beating Creighton's defenders off the dribble a little bit. So that'll be something to keep an eye on if Ty Grant Foster is able to get to the rim at will and kind of attack their defense that way.
I'll put it this way: you watched enough of the game, then. If you took that away, that was enough of the game.
And I saw that Creighton was able to score a lot, but they were also maybe getting scored on more than they'd like. So,
yeah, and the one thing to take note of for you guys, Karam Cohen, the backup five for the Jays, wasn't available due to eligibility rules, and he's going to be available on Tuesday. And I think that is going to make a world of difference when it comes to the defensive side of things. They really like him offensively, but he's going to be able to give a more of a defensive presence and a backup role than Creighton really had available on Friday night.
Well, yeah, and I think you touched on some really important things, right? With all we've talked about with Gonzaga's depth is, I do think they're deep, but I think they're way more deep at the guard and the wing spots. versus interior. And so, I saw Ike had 5 last night. That could be an advantage. I mean, listen, like Coach Mack drills into our guys, like, don't foul.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Kalkbrenner's career. He didn't foul out a single game of his entire career, and not many people know that, which is insane. And he played 32 to 40 minutes. It was nuts. So I'm interested in this game to see, can Owen – now Owen's not going to be expected to play the 35 minutes. He needs to be able to play 22 to 25 a game, I think, especially with Karen back. But can he play without fouling? That's going to be very interesting. Can he draw fouls? I'm interested to see how Creighton guards EK in the post. We haven't seen double teams in quite some time since we've had Kalk. So, do we do that? I don't know. I'm very interested to see how we guard you guys on the interior. You touched on something that I've said. Jimmie's heard me say it too many times already. I am worried about our athleticism, not just in this matchup, but in general. And so, how will that impact us? I think there's a lot of storylines in this game, but maybe the bigger one overall, and this is one of my questions I wanted to get with you, is to talk about it. But like, that's a very hard building to play in for visitors. This team isn't a team that's been together for years. The communication isn't there yet. You can see it defensively. And so I want your perspective on how hard and why is it, obviously the noise, but just in general, like coming into that building, it's hard to win there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be their first big game in the kennel. I mean, they played Texas Southern there on a Monday that didn't quite draw the same level of energy and excitement and attendance that Tuesday's game is going to. But I think one key for Creighton would be to start fast and not get down 10-0 in the first 5 minutes, because that's where a 10-0 lead can feel like a 20-0 lead and kind of get ugly from there. You even saw that last night with Oklahoma at Spokane Arena, which is just kind of a bigger version of the kennel. It's not as intimate as the kennel is, but very tough place to play. But teams have come in there and won games. I mean, you look at St. Mary's last year, won a game there. Santa Clara won a game there a couple of years back. I remember LMU going in there and winning. So not impossible. I think 4 or 5 years ago, I think they had gone 3 or 4 seasons without losing a game there, but they've dropped a few there recently. So that could be something to look at for Creighton. But I think starting fast and not letting Gonzaga go up early, which is, actually Gonzaga's been trailing the first 4 minutes of their last 2 games. So they haven't exactly started fast themselves. So I think Creighton kind of has to do that to keep themselves in the game. Like you said, if it's a group of guys who haven't played together a ton, going into an atmosphere like that can be pretty intimidating, especially for your second game of the season. So I think that's probably a big key, communicating. But just the way that Mark Few praised Mac last night for just the way he coaches, and I think he'll have him ready to go. And I think the game plan will be pretty detailed, and I don't see any issues there. But executing that on a stage like Tuesday, I think will be a different story, and we'll see kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
If you're a Gonzaga fan, check out spokesman.com, catch Theo's work there, and catch all the updates on everything going on throughout the season for Gonzaga's men's basketball. I got to ask about expectations for you post this game. How does your expectations for this Gonzaga team change if they win this game versus if they lose on Tuesday night at home versus Creighton?
Yeah, I don't think it'll do a lot, because if you look at last year, I mean, they did beat Baylor by 38 points in that opener, and then actually went to San Diego State and won that game by I think by double digits down in San Diego. And everyone was feeling pretty high after a 2-0 start in quad one games, and especially the Baylor game being a top 10 team like that at home. But they actually lost the rest of their quad one games in non-conference, and I think they were 0-8 on the season in 2 possession games. So just basically lost every single non-conference game by 1 or 2 possessions, and that really kind of tanked their resume. And then they lost a few more in conference play. So I think people will kind of remember last year as kind of a inflection point, and winning 2 quad one games to start the year means nothing if you can't go out and win 2 or 3 more throughout the non-conference schedule. But certainly if you can beat a team like Oklahoma, which I think will be different playing style wise than Creighton, if you can kind of show that you can beat 2 different teams 2 different ways, and then that's obviously a good sign to start the year. But again, doesn't matter if you beat Creighton on Tuesday and then go to ASU on Friday and lose in Tempe. So they'll have to kind of keep winning these games, and you don't need to win everyone. But if you're Gonzaga, you probably have to hope to win at least half of them to have a chance to kind of be in that top 3-4 seed line conversation. So it won't change too much, but certainly beating a team like Creighton that's going to play differently. Probably be a little bit more methodical than Oklahoma was. Better shooting, obviously a big man like Owen Freeman. They haven't seen that yet, so I think it'll give me confidence that they can kind of win in a different way. But certainly need to kind of do it for 2 months before you really feel good about them being a second weekend team.
Yeah. So if you had to look at this matchup, what's your favorite storyline of the matchup? Is for me, at first I was thinking, Ike versus Freeman. I love that. But the more and more I've thought about this matchup, for me, it comes down to Mac and Coach Few. Two guys that have been at the top of the profession, two guys that are their careers are it's somewhat winding down, but the expectations are still high. Where does it lie for you?
Yeah, well, I wish we were playing this game last year because I would have loved to see Colin Brenner versus Ike and Nembhard versus Creighton. But actually, I think wasn't Creighton supposed to play in the one of those Thanksgiving week tournaments the last couple of years that Gonzaga was playing, and I think they were supposed to be in the field and they dropped out. Was it Hawaii?
Yeah, it was when we switched from the Bahamas,
Hawaii.
Right?
Atlantis.
It was Atlantis. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was circling that one and hoping that we would get the Creighton Gonzaga matchup last year, but wasn't to be, and two very different teams obviously this year. So I think my I actually write a key matchup before the game, so I think I'll probably focus on the front court. But certainly anytime you have Mark Few and another one of the top coaches in the country facing off, it's kind of a chess match, and those two have history playing each other. I wasn't covering the team when they had their last series like this, but we'll be interested to see if we get this matchup 2 years in a row with both coaches. I know Mac's at the tail end of his career, and Few's kind of nearing the end. I'm not sure if he's quite there yet, like Mac is, but certainly that's an advantage having a coach like Mac in a game like this, especially with a young team. So. Also interested to see Alan Huss back at Creighton. I think he's someone else who possibly makes a difference. I'm not sure if he has a scout in this game, but kind of two head coaches in waiting too, with Brian Michelson at Gonzaga and Huss at Creighton. So the coaching aspect's interesting, and we'll see kind of how they both counter each other throughout the game, because I'm sure both will have to make adjustments. And every game like this feels like it's going to be a game of runs. So I think both teams will have to adjust throughout.
I don't know if you can tell by looking at Casey and I, but we both love to eat. And obviously, Pepper Jack's Grill is not out in Spokane, Washington. So if anybody's making the trip from Omaha to Spokane, do you have any haunts that they should stop by and grab food at?
Yeah, we don't have quite the steakhouse options that you guys have in Omaha. I was actually in Omaha a couple of years ago when the Zags played Baylor in Sioux Falls, and I was doing a big Hunter Salas feature. So I got there a couple of days early and
sure.
Spent some time in Omaha and checked out some of the haunts there. But
where'd you go? You remember?
I didn't. I don't think I hit a steakhouse because my expense account at the newspaper is only so high every day. So I put a big old steak on the expense account. But I did go to a place that was I want to say famous for their Reuben sandwiches.
Yeah. There's a couple.
Blue.
Reuben was famously invented here.
Blackstone, the spot in Blackstone. Crescent Moon?
Crescent Moon, yeah.
Crescent Moon, that's the one. Yeah. Went there. I'm also a big craft beer guy, so I checked out a few breweries in the town. And
there's plenty of those in Omaha, that's for sure.
Yeah. Just remember it being, I think it was mid-December and freezing, so no different than Spokane.
No different than today.
It's cold. Were you here, what, 7 years ago when Gonzaga was number one and came into town? No,
I'll be there next year, but I didn't start covering Gonzaga full time until the 21-22 season. So
okay,
haven't seen a game there yet, but excited for that atmosphere next year. But
where are the spots in Spokane though? We gotta give our fans something.
Trying to think. I don't hit the nice places too much.
Well, that's all we want. We want the hole in the walls that people should check out there. Legendary to Spokane.
Downtown. I'm just blanking on all my favorite places. Actually, my favorite restaurant is the Flying Goat Pizza. Good pizza place. in Spokane.
With a name like the Flying Goat, it's got to be good.
I don't know why Spokane loves goats, but we have an Iron Goat Brewing. We have a Flying Goat Pizza. And then if you go to downtown Spokane, this would be a good place to visit. Just the Riverfront Park in downtown Spokane has a garbage goat. And so there's a goat. It's like a little statue, and you can feed garbage into this goat, and it sucks it up. And kind of stupid, but fun, unique.
Yeah.
And so
kids would love that for sure.
Mine did. We were there this summer, and we did. We stuck paper in the vacuum, basically. But they loved it. So
Flying Goat would be my go-to around campus. Jack and Dan is a pretty popular Gonzaga bar. If that's kind of your scene. Downtown Spokane has a bunch of great options. Again, there's a place that does tacos downtown that I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me, but the Steam Plant is a good restaurant. So there's a number of options.
Cool. Well, before we let you out of here, I want to get your prediction on the game, and then I want to get your long-term expectations this season for Gonzaga.
Yeah. Let's see.
You don't have to give us a score per se, but something to get our fans riled up.
You guys have to give me a prediction too.
Jimmie will.
Why do I got to do it?
Because I'm so bad at it. I'm so bad at that stuff.
Listen, Theo, he's not joking. He's pretty awful at it.
Everyone's predictions, right? until they're right. So, I think it's going to be. I think Gonzaga is going to be able to score kind of the way that they did last night. So I'm gonna say Gonzaga is able to score in the 80s. Let's go with 85 to 76 Gonzaga. I think Creighton's going to score better than Texas Southern and Oklahoma both did. I think the matchup inside is going to be really interesting, and again another good test for Gonzaga's perimeter defense early in the year. So. We'll see how it goes, but it's hard to pick against Gonzaga in the kennel. I don't think I've ever picked another opponent to beat them there. So we'll see if that changes Tuesday, but hard place to win. And especially after last night, I think I kind of needed to see them play a high major opponent like Oklahoma. You don't take much from a game against Texas Southern, similar to probably you guys feeling the same way about South Dakota. So that kind of confirmed what I thought this team could be a little bit more. And so I think they have a pretty good chance to win on Tuesday.
Yeah, I don't feel great about the matchup. I think I'm with you. I think Gonzaga's athleticism gets the best of Creighton. I think it's a lot closer than people in Spokane probably want it to be at halftime, but I think the athleticism from the Zags kind of pull away. I have it 81-74 Gonzaga.
Pretty close.
Casey, do you care to give us a horrible prediction?
No, I'm just terrible. I would think Gonzaga would score more than that. I would think Gonzaga is going to be in the 90s. I do think it's really hard to play on the road, to play in that environment, a team that's relatively new together. So, no, I don't feel great about the matchup. I'll say this though, I think that as I reflect on the South Dakota game, which we had Coach Huff on our show immediately following the game, and if any fans go back and watch that, he was very honest.
Yeah.
And didn't.
He wasn't thrilled
back. But here's what I'll say: teams, because I've been on this bandwagon for a little bit with leadership. We don't have a true leader yet on this team. Someone needs to kind of step up. And teams without really true player-led leadership can tend to play down to their competition. And I'm not disparaging South Dakota in any way, but I do think you have a tendency to play down. I expect us to play very hard and to be way more physical than you see on that tape against South Dakota. So I do think it's going to be closer, but I also think both teams are going to be able to score. So I'll say this. I think Gonzaga is somewhere in the 90s. I think Creighton somewhere in the 80s. And that's the best I can give you. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's 100-2. But it's a tough matchup. It's a tough place to play, and so we're going to see. But I'm excited. It's on ESPN. 2 top 25 teams on a Tuesday night. The only thing we're missing is John Fanta calling the game. If Fanta was calling the game, it'd be golden. But
yeah, maybe later in the year. But the other question I had for you guys, their point guard Jason Green didn't play in the South Dakota game.
He's a 4. He's a 4.
4-man, yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Is he expected to go Tuesday? What do you guys think his chances are of playing?
I haven't heard yet. It's kind of like the question that I want to answer too, because I think that changes everything, to be honest with you. So I have not officially heard, but it was a late scratch. I mean, they had a 24-hour notice, if that. I think Huff maybe even said 12 hours.
The day before, yeah, 12 hour, 4 o'clock the day before. So that makes me think he's going to be one of those situations where probably didn't need him for South Dakota. So if you feel like you're going to need him against Gonzaga, which they will, you probably should. You probably should keep, because he's kind of the Swiss Army knife do it all. He plays the 4, but he kind of stretches the floor a little bit, and he plays defense and can score. So
okay,
that's going to be a key component to this game for sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks for joining us, Theo.
Yeah, Theo, we appreciate it.
Yep, sounds good. And I'll maybe see you guys down the road in Las Vegas, and maybe for a second matchup between Gonzaga and Creighton down there. We'll see.
Might be able to see each other third time too if things go well for both squads.
Definitely.
That's Theo Lawson.
Yep.
That's Theo Lawson from spokesman.com. If you're a Gonzaga fan, check it out, the Big East Energy Podcast Network for the first time. For some odd reason you're crazy enough not to follow Theo and his team, make sure you do so and subscribe to spokesman.com today. Theo, thanks, man. We appreciate it. Safe travels throughout the season, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Yep. Thanks for the chat. Thanks, guys.
Steak in America. At Pepper Jack's Grill, we craft your Philly just the way you like it. Fresh ingredients, sizzling on the grill, and endless customization options. Not just Phillies, we've got rice bowls, burritos, nachos, and even vegetarian choices. And don't forget those crispy fries with our famous spicy ranch. With 10 great locations in Omaha, there's a delicious meal waiting for everyone in the family. Pepper Jack's Grill, your Philly, your way.
At Pyramid Contractors, we do it all. From repairing or replacing your roof to updating siding, windows, or gutters. When you have a home improvement project, call Pyramid Contractors.
PyramidRoof.com, never settle for less.
Welcome back into the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pepper Jack's Grill and Pyramid Contractors. Thank you again very much to Theo Lawson from spokesman.com. If you are a Gonzaga fan, feel free to head over there and subscribe today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to bigeastenergy.com as well to keep up to date on all the action happening across the Big East Conference in men's and women's basketball. Casey, obviously, we're excited for Tuesday night as well. We unfortunately will not be there, but this feels like I feel like what we saw from Creighton in the 2 exhibition games versus what we saw from them in the very first game against South Dakota really felt like 2 different teams. And it kind of was. We talked about Jason Green with Theo a minute ago, but also Karen Conan gets thrown back into the equation. And it feels like this is going to be a more complete team. I think whatever you see on Tuesday night is more who Creighton is going to be long-term versus than what you saw in game number 1, which is the way it should be, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think having Jason back, hopefully, don't know yet, but hopefully having him back would be huge. I think too, again, I really stand by what I said. Teams have a tendency when you play non-Division I to play down to that level of competition. It's kind of human nature. You just expect that you're going to be able to roll the balls out and win, especially at home, versus you're going into a game where you're going to be picked to lose. I don't know what the spread will be, but I think I'm just, what do you think? I'm so bad at this, but probably around 4, I would think 4 or 5. So like you're not going to be the favorite in the game. So there's going to be some stuff there that gives you a little bit of extra added motivation. And so I think what Theo said about starting fast is really important. If you get down to this team on the road at their place and what should be an unbelievable environment, it's going to be very hard to come back from that. So, we haven't seen a Creighton team really just torch the nets yet this year. So you hope that we can get some solid perimeter shooting that can keep the crowd at bay a little bit, take some pressure off of our bigs. But we'll see. I'm really excited for the matchup, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I hope it's a lot of fun to watch the whole way through.
Yeah, and we talked about storylines about both teams with Theo a minute ago, but this kind of determines what we're going to be talking about on the show, what the talking heads, what the folks inside the chat are going to be discussing over the next couple of months, because it really is truly the first measuring stick game and really the only measuring stick game, no offense, Nebraska, until you get to Las Vegas. So if that's the case, and I think before the season, the expectations of this team was to get Greg McDermott to a Final Four. I think those expectations after seeing what this team has been over the 2 scrimmages and against South Dakota have been tapered just a little bit. But as we mentioned in the post-game show after the first game, what Greg McDermott teams look like in November versus what they look like in February are often very, very different. And I will caution people all season long, don't push the panic button if things don't look like they're a polished product, because it would be really weird if they did at this point.
Yeah, well, I think I said it last year too. Right now, he will be fired from my favorite football team, the Dolphins. But I do think a lot of what stuff he says is good in press conferences, where he says if this is the best version of Creighton basketball you see is Tuesday night, then we're not going to be very good. Yeah. So I do think that's good advice. Who knows? We can go out there and win this game. I sure hope so. If we do, the expectations are just going to continue to go up and to the right.
That's why I like Theo's response to expectations of floor versus ceiling. If they win or lose this game, they being Gonzaga, and he's like, doesn't really matter. Like they're essentially a shoo-in for the tournament as long as they beat St. Mary's, and the rest plays itself out in March. And I think Creighton's finally gotten to a point where that's kind of where they expect. Now you got to win a bunch of games in the Big East. I'm not saying you got to only beat UConn or St. John's or whatever. You got to win a ton. But I think the days of, oh no, we lost to Southern Illinois are very much a thing of the past, and it's at the point where the expectations of the people that fill 15,000 seats every time Creighton rolls the ball out in Omaha are, okay, let's take care of business. Let's discuss the real season when March happens.
Yeah, for sure. I think what it is, though, is it's seeding. It's you're operating under the assumption we're going to make the NCAA tournament. Okay.
Yeah.
You're operating under the assumption that we're going to finish third. Probably, for me, that's
wow. Set the bar low.
Look, you're right. You're right. But I am just trying to be realistic and give you what I really think. Like I do think that UConn and St. John's are ridiculously good, and so
just for another episode. But I think that's a really interesting debate. Is like, how much does where you're seated in New York matter to Creighton fans? That's something that I think a lot of people would obviously like to see Greg McDermott win a tournament before in the Big East before he leaves, as well as make a Final Four. That's something that's alluded to him. And also, like, do you care? Does it matter? Like, I think for a long time, people cared where they got seeded in their conference tournament. Now it's like, okay, as long as you're in those top 4 seeds and you got a chance to win the whole thing, that's probably most people care about.
Yeah, I mean, there's some strategy too to like what seeds you are based on game times and stuff like that. But I'm just thinking long term as far as if you're 4th, 5th, 6th in the Big East, if you make the tournament, your seed in the NCAA tournament is going to be lower. That's all I'm saying. This is a game that when they put up,
try not to hit the 8-9 line.
Yeah, like you want to be, you just don't want you don't want to be there. So it's an important game in that aspect, but I think more so than anything, it's an important game to give us, a really good opponent to challenge us, to learn some lessons from. Hopefully, come out with a really big road win, and again, set your expectations even higher to where this, to see what this team can reach. So I'm excited. Tuesday night should be a lot of fun.
Well, hopefully you can join us Tuesday night for a halftime and a post game show where Steve Murfeld, Creighton assistant coach, will join us after the hopeful win over Gonzaga. We'll talk to you then. This has been the Roll Jays podcast brought to you by Pepper Jack's Grill and Pyramid Contractors. That's Casey Matthews. I'm the handsome one of the group, Jimmie Allen. We appreciate you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Big East Energy. Follow us for all updates for men's and women's basketball across the conference. We'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks for joining us.